Coming up this week on Linux Weekly Daily Wednesdays, the first true x86 tablet launches an Indiegogo campaign, and one of the rewards is a copy of Windows 10. You can't make that up. Then we're going to talk about a handy guide for hacking your Raspberry with a skateboard.
And Fedora 25 is out! And we can't make the Wayland is now default joke anymore. And the 1.2 revision of the Raspberry Pi 2 gets a new processor, which is the exact same one used in the Raspberry Pi 3.
And System 76 releases a new gaming laptop, or transportable computer would be more appropriate. And a group of young students did what hundreds of Silicon Valley engineers couldn't by making a Chrome extensions to tell apart fake book stories.
Okay, Laz, let's just jump into this with a little bit of a public service announcement. No, you're not going crazy unless you already were. The latest 375.20 drivers have a couple of issues. The main one, again, we were joking before the show, is like, here's really all it does. It can get chuggy with multiple OpenGL windows running, and I'm sure people with 480s and other AMD cards are just like, oh yeah, big problem you guys got over there. But it does affect the 980. I noticed it last Saturday when we were playing Rocket Cars in the after show, because I had a bunch of OpenGL junk open for layering transparent windows and stuff like that. It was chuggy for no reason. Then I played a little bit Monday, it was chuggy for no reason. Then I ran across this and I was like, it's great. Pedro, you were able to replicate it by opening, 300 Gears instances?
18. I saw in the thread on the Nvidia Dev Talk forums that someone was able to replicate it with a 980 by opening 12 GLX Gears windows. So I decided, you know what? Let's try it. So I started opening GLX Gears windows, and I got up to 17. It was still running. Admittedly, the FERPs counter that was showing on the terminal was getting progressively lower with each one I opened. But as soon as I opened the 18th one, it showed nothing, and all of the others started to really, really chug. So, yeah, admittedly, I had to push the 1080 a bit more than people with 980s and 970s for the issue to present itself, but it's there. Oh, it's there.
Strider, you found a very clever way of avoiding this issue, didn't you?
Yes, I avoided it by not installing the driver. And I haven't updated the driver. I don't even have the graphics driver PPA installed on my system since the Ubuntu 6.10 updates. And they have version 3.6.7 out of the box, so that's it's good enough for pretty much anything. So yeah, no issues on my hand, and I don't plan to update soon. I mean, not until they get that fixed. And maybe after that, I will consider upgrading.
Yeah, they know it's an issue, and they're actively tracking everything. So if you run into it and you have a configuration that is not currently present in the thread, don't worry, there'll be links in the show notes for you to check. You may want to send them the API trace, and they're asking for something else. It's the usual NVIDIA thing. You'll find it.
Hey, man, I hear these people have a new laptop out with a 4K.
Yeah.
What? System 76?
So a new gaming laptop has been released from System 76. It's the Oryx, and it comes with the 4K screen. Well, you can have a 4K screen and Nvidia Pascal GPU. So 1070, or I think you can also configure with a 1060.
Yeah.
And it's quite expensive. I mean, the starting price is $1,800 for the 4K monitor and the Pascal GPU. You can go up to 7K if you go with all the options and everything.
It's 9 terabytes of SSD storage, and the price turns out to a very, very smooth $7,012. Blimey.
Yeah, it's pretty much, I think it's the only gaming laptop for Linux out there. You can have it preloaded with Ubuntu 16.4 or 16.10. I mean, if there's one thing this laptop would be weak, it would be with the battery life. They don't say anything about the battery life, but I would expect that with such a machine, what you're looking for is enough battery to bring the laptop from one power outlet to the other one.
That's exactly what I was about to bring up. That is a thing. This is one of their high-end models, and, with System 76, I've heard almost 100% positive on their high-end laptops. Kind of some nightmare fuel about their low-end bits, but this is also configurable with a 1080p screen. Get that instead. Somebody with a UHD monitor running a full-bore 980 on it. So, don't expect to be joining like, oh my god, I can play games in 4. No, you'll be doing good to display your desktop at that resolution. But you could install maybe Fedora 25 workstation on it.
You could, although it's not officially supported, but that's a System 76 thing. This is the Fedora magazine, and they are saying, look, it's Fedora 25. It's out, and it comes with GNOME 3.22. A Wayland display server now replaces the old X11 display server by default. Well,
what is this, man? They're supporting Flatpak? I thought Snappak was the future.
Canonical would like you to believe that, no. The big thing here is Wayland is now the default display manager. You can still go back to X if you really want to, but if you are one of those people that just likes to go...
You said you're going to launch Wayland and realize that everything's on fire, then you go back to X, right?
Yeah, so you get to try it, and if you really want to go scorched earth, you can start using the Wayland server with the X compatibility layer. So good luck with that. I think we will probably be hearing from Jordan on Saturday, so you might want to tune in.
And there's kind of throwing back to that Nvidia bug, because the 25 ships, if you have the Nvidia, with the newer X server, that you have to run 375 on. So keep that in mind if you have issues. What do you have in here, Strider?
Yeah, I mean, in the announcement, there was no word about the compatibility with the Nvidia driver and the AMD GPU Pro driver.
Well, I guess that's got something to do with the fact that Fedora doesn't provide those drivers officially. You need third-party repos to have those, but buggy driver release aside, Nvidia did introduce support for the standard Nvidia config or vendor-neutral dispatch of EGL. So you can actually have some decent window management in Wayland if you have the Nvidia proprietary drivers installed, be it through RPM Fusion or Negativo 17's repos, what have you. As for AMD, on the other hand, they might release it at some point in 2017, assuming they support Fedora now, because back in the old FGLRX days, they didn't.
That's pretty fascinating. But I heard Strider is actually a nice guy.
Ooh.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of talk going on about the fake stories, the fake news that have been published on Facebook before the elections and during the election period. And everybody is still talking about that, and Facebook has said, Mark Zuckerberg has said that it wasn't such a big problem, and it didn't have an effect on the election overall. But a lot of people don't believe that and believe that it's an actual problem. And so a group of college students have developed a Chrome extension called FIB, Stop Living a Lie, which reminds me of South Park for some reason, that detects fake news stories on Facebook. So it uses some Python code on the backend and some JavaScript on the front end, and it uses a bunch of different APIs like Bing, for example, to be able to detect true stories from fake stories, like it puts a score on that kind of thing. So it's kind of a neat proof of concepts, and it's all that it is. It's just a proof of concept, because I've looked at the code on GitHub, It's available for everyone to look at. Yeah, it's a prototype. It's made by young people that are not very experienced. It was their first experience with JavaScript. They did it. And I think it was also their first experience with Python. It's very cool that they got something working, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's production ready. And it shows on the source code. You can see right away it's a bit all over the place. But yeah, very, very cool project. And I would like if it went further away and if it matured a bit, that would be a neat little project.
I don't know. Every time I see something like this, my first thought is, all right, who watches the watchdogs? Who decides what's real news and not? And more importantly, maybe because I'm like 1 year out from being a millennial. I looked that up and I was like, yes, not a millennial. Here's the thing. If you need someone to Snopes articles and figure out hashtag not the onion for you, I feel sorry for you, son.
Yeah, but then again, never underestimate the power of stupid people.
They will build.
Isn't that right, USA? Yes. So, going, from something that's tangentially related to Linux to something that is even less tangentially related to Linux, AMD execs sold millions of shares before news boosted stock price.
Pedro, why'd you put this in here, man? No one.
I didn't.
Yeah. I'm throwing you under the bus, son.
I didn't. But this is just a little bit of financial news because some people noticed earlier in the week that AMD stocks reached an all-time high over the past 5 years. It had previously tanked at around $1 per share, and now it's currently up to $9. That's a pretty good turn up for them. But there were some people that were finding it kind of weird that there were so many shares available and for sale before the shares topped out. And turns out you sell while the stocks are not as high as you're expecting them to, so you can pay less taxes because AMD never does anything shady, right?
Mm-hmm. You just hate AMD. I don't know. I just thought I'd bring this in because we all love AMD, despite what some people think.
We do.
And AMD and Linux, I mean, it's like that underdog mentality that kind of draws to, it's like, if you know somebody and it's like, you run Linux, it's like, they have an AMD box somewhere in the house. Kind of worried, just a little bit worried because I was like, oh man, I'm speculating, but I'll always go straight laser to the negative, like worst possible scenario just because life, right? I was like, oh man, do they really know how butchered Zen's going to be? Maybe they're getting out while the getting's good and they didn't expect it to jump up. Who knows? Anyway, we spent too long talking about that story. Shame on you for putting it in there.
Let's talk about ourselves.
No, let's talk about the lovely people who make this show possible. That's right, you are Patreons. We currently have 89 Patreons sponsoring not only this show, but also Linux Gamecast Weekly at the tune of $152 per Saturday night. Trainwreck. Hop in, we have some goals, pick a reward tier, check it out, maybe you like what we do, maybe you like tuning in live, maybe you'd like, us to continue doing it, right?
Insanity, yes. But yeah, you can actually, we still are doing the Left for Bread series, so if you enjoyed what you've seen so far and you'd like to start maybe getting those episodes about a week in advance, we've actually started the Left 4 Dead 1 campaigns now. And if you're a Patreon, you get to see that right now.
And there's something I'm going to be putting up, maybe not later today, because I just had a nightmare train dropped on me, and this is going to be a nightmare of a video to edit. Maybe tomorrow. I remembered to record a time-lapse of me making Linux Gamecast Weekly. So
awesome.
I mean, we're not talking just video. I mean, the entire production from, okay, Vin woke up, Vin drink coffee. Well, I don't drink coffee, I drink tea, but, same deal. Then, woo, I'm done. Peace Among Worlds, noping out. Okay. Beautiful people, you should have a secure web zone using HTTPS. And this is a little thing on Penguin WP. This is more like, yo, check this out. I mean, if you're like, oh, I got a WordPress install. Oh, and I got cPanel. And Nick, I can just hear Strider vibrating. He's like, no one uses less cPanel.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tutorial. I mean, they just assume that people use cPanel?
No, they're doing a tutorial for people who use cPanel. You see? See how you look at it the wrong way sometimes?
Okay.
Okay,
yeah.
so if it's a tutorial for cPanel, why did they mention WordPress at all?
Because it's talking about how to use WordPress plugins. Like Force SSL for WordPress, and maybe because of the name of the site.
Okay, so there's that one. No, because I saw that, and I'm like, okay, the tutorial.
Baby, keep them coming. I got the bat right here.
No, it's a tutorial to add Let's Encrypt to WordPress, and the first thing is open cPanel. It's like, what?
Mm-hmm.
What? So I thought, maybe I'll make a tutorial on how to add Let's Encrypt through Plesk, and the first step will be to, install Joomla or Drupal.
No, but more seriously, I do have plans to release a tutorial for Let's Encrypt for Nginx reverse proxies, because it's a bit more complex than just cPanel. Just checking a checkbox on cPanel.
Okay, well, we gave that a quick mention because the purpose of that is for somebody with WordPress. You're like, hey, I want to use Let's Encrypt. You should use Let's Encrypt. We just had our nightmare train with our Komodo certificate taking 7 hours to get renewed. I was a happy camper because I literally tried to publish the show. And it just flipped out. And I was like, oh, here we go. This is why nothing has went wrong for 2 weeks in my life. Here it is. This is what I've been waiting on. Okay, let's get it over with. But yeah, check that out. That's the entire scope of it to make it wicked quick, wicked easy, and wicked simple. Web update. Oh man, you're actually you're looking at this through Vivaldi browser.
Yep, Ven is a big fan of Antonio Lucio Vivaldi. Although it's probably a good thing that he's already dead and he doesn't get to see his name attached to a web browser. But hey, it's Vivaldi. It uses the Blink engine. It's received a new 1.5 update. The biggest thing is it syncs the background light that's being generated from the web page to the Philips Hue light strips, which you can tape on the back of your monitor or your TV. For the 2 people in the world that are actively using those. But in all seriousness, I've seen those things at work, and when they work, they actually do help. If you're like me and you like to sit in front of the computer in the dark, it actually makes the transition from the brightness of the screen and into the darkness much more amiable, as it were. And they also introduce built-in support for Chromecast. So you don't need to run Chrome specifically for that if you'd rather run Vivaldi for some reason.
I don't know. I run it. I like it. I was reading through it, and Vivaldi is aimed at power users. So I was like, what? Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can change the background color. That's what being a power user is all about.
Well, yeah, that's a power user in the same sense that you can be a Windows power user without working at Microsoft. You can't.
Oh, a Windows power user. Is that somebody who just clicks on the next button very well?
Yes, there'll be a bit of that in the feedback.
Anyway, I mean, I like the Vivaldi. I mean, it is very fast at loading tabs because it remembers all the tabs all the time. And I was like, oh, why is this taking a full second and a half to... Then it's got like 30 tabs open. I was like, all right, fair enough. So, let's talk about things we'll probably never see. First true Linux x86 64 tablet currently on Indiegogo. They need $100,000 to somehow make this a thing. Currently, 1,817 people believe they can pull it off. Everyone wants this. This is the unicorn, right? I mean, everyone's been saying 4 years that, hey, just give us a tablet and... Oh, bad form. Windows 10. Really? Okay, for your audio listeners, their video right here, Windows 10 logo. But that's okay, because if you scroll down, one of the rewards is Windows 10 Professional. What? Okay. Make this make sense, Pedro.
I didn't even get to the whole Windows 10 thing. I'm like, okay, so it's the first true Linux x86 x64 tablet. All right, that looks interesting. That's something I've wanted for a while. And then you start reading, you read like the very first elevator pitch, as it were. Our plan now is to bring to the world a tablet specifically designed and tailored for the OpenSUSE Leap operating system. All right, then, that looked interesting, because all my interest just went out the window.
Yeah, you can probably install other systems on it, like Fedora or Ubuntu. But seriously, that video, I cringed after watching the first 3 seconds of the presentations, because, don't target your tablets at such a geeky audience. Seriously, if you restrict your markets to just Linux users, you're not going to make it, especially if you want $100,000. And so far, there are not a lot of people who have pledged for that tablet. They're really, really far.
No, and unlike the Steam Boy or whatever they're calling it this week, I think a lot of people looked at this. They saw Windows 10 and went, nope, and they ran back away. Then the other people that were still hanging around went, nah, you're not going to be able to make this around $1,000, which I would like to be proven wrong, mind you. I always say that.
The base model is $200, and it's a good machine, and I would want to get one to replace my old Nexus 7. If you get the higher-end models, they're slightly better than the $200 model, but they're not that much better. So the best value is really the lowest one. But I wish they would target it at a much wider audience. And you can ship a device with OpenSUSE with it in it and just market it to everyone. If you believe
including Windows users, since at the $50 level, they outright give you a license for it.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing. It was like, why do you even bring Windows 10 up? If you want a Windows 10 tablet, it's called a Surface Pro, man. Microsoft has already got you covered on that one. Or you could buy like that stupid WinBook thing that I have. It's just like, oh, that's cute. That's the only way I love Windows in my house, is in a little self-contained tablet form, wrapped in aluminum foil just in case. Battery life, I'm a little worried about on the 6,500 milliamps. Might be good for 7, possibly 10 minutes, Strider, right?
They say 9 hours of usage.
Okay, if we run that through the DBSotron, so about 2.5 real world.
With GNOME 3, no.
Try it,
Nope.
No, it was like 9 hours, like asterisks. It was like with Windows 10, only 1% screen brightness plugged into the wall.
Sometimes they get it right. It would deserve a benchmark, a proper benchmark to know what the battery life is like.
Okay.
That's assuming it will ever come out.
Why is this
Terminator?
Seriously?
I'm a big fan of the Terminator terminal emulator. So this is it's pretty much like GNOME terminal, except it lets you have splits, like you split your terminal in several parts, and it's really, really enjoyable to use. But for the past few weeks, I'd say it's been really crashy, and I was telling myself,
how did you manage to mirror Terminator?
I don't know. I had it was pretty stable for the past 8 years. I've been using this for years, and lately it's been crashing on me several times a day. I don't know how.
Weird.
Hey, man, all future work for this is going to be coming up in GTK 3, which is the wrong GTK. No longer try to backport things. All right, that way lies madness. Okay.
Terminator. It's one of those terminal emulators that it basically comes with tmux integrated, so you can do the split terminal, and you get a new bash session from each and every single one of the splits. And it had been using GTK2 for the longest time.
Pedro, that sounds horribly less efficient than Vin having between 20 and 25 virtual terminals open on his desktop at any given time.
Yeah. It's really insane.
So yesterday they released 2 versions. So they released 1.0, which is the very last GTK2 version, and they released 1.90, which is the first release, first stable release with GTK 3. So what you would want to use is a GTK 3.1 because that's the one that will receive updates. And 1.0 is mostly targeted at distributions that are still shipping with like the GTK 2 stuff. So yeah, I'm pretty pleased that this has been released because just 2 days ago I've tried another one called Terminix, which is mostly the same thing, but I mean, it's a much newer project. So I might try giving that new Terminator and GTK 3 a go, see how stable it is. If it's much stabler, I might go back, yeah.
All right. So before we get into our slice of pie, we have a little bit of an interview this week. Yes, we do, which is also convenient that we were talking about GTK 3 just now, because we have Mr. Ikey Doherty. Yes. And today we have a little something we like to do every now and again, which is we kind of sort of willingly kidnap someone and force them to be on the show for our entertainment, as the case may be, and we basically grill him or her with some questions. So this week we have one of the, well, perhaps some might argue the main person behind the Solus Project is Mr. Ikey Doherty.
Yo, man, what's up? Hello.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, what's with the punching bag, man?
Other people like to fix bugs. I like to deal with stress.
Okay. I mean, that's definitely a thing. So we're going to sit back, relax, just have a quick chat. Again, we do apologize for running ever so late, but a couple of questions and some thoughts because, ladies and gentlemen, you all thought about it at some point in your life where you're sitting there, maybe at university, having a bit too much to drink when you're 9, and you're like, tomorrow I'm going to get up and make a Linux distribution all my own. A lot of people have that. That never happens. You never think about it again. And there's a second tier of people who actually go through it and no one ever uses it. No one ever knows about it. This is kind of the rarest of the rare. Having that idea, making it, and getting more than 6 people to use it. So how did that all come about, man? Were you just sitting there? You're like, screw this punching bag. I need to write a Linux distribution.
It's something I've been chasing for a few years in one form or another. It's one of those things, whatever I happen to use, I'm never quite happy with it, and I know that I'm able to build something to fix those issues that I do have. So that's kind of how it comes about. You're not able to let go. You can't just give in and say, okay, this thing's got bugs, but I'm just going to live with it. So that's kind of how that all starts. You just can't let anything go. And it's, to use your analogy of, you know, you have a few drinks, you think about it. I'm in the alimony stages.
All right, fair enough. So Solus specifically, what's your sales pitch for the distro as it is right now?
Yeah, so the main thing about Solus is it tries to do things a little bit differently from other distros, not for the sake of doing things differently, just that's how I feel they need to be done. Normally we have a generic distribution that you can use anywhere from a toaster to a satellite. With Solus, I wanted to make something that was only for the desktop. And there's a lot of desktop distributions out there. But my personal feeling is you're trying to shoehorn something to fit. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to see, could it be done where you could only build for a desktop? In a sense, you're kind of cutting corners because you never need to think about another profile. I don't need to worry if my kernel is going to be okay on a server and a desktop. I only need to care about the desktop. So that allows me to, in a way, cheat and make optimizations that other distributions wouldn't be able to do.
I don't know. There's like almost every fiber of my body, because later in the show, well, actually, all right, time shifting, movie magic, right? We previously talked about, which we have yet to do, but we'll soon do, an x86 tablet, and I really want to put Solus on that just because it's meant for the desktop.
But I remember back in the day, there was a little Debian-based distro called Solus. What was the proverbial straw that broke that particular camel's back?
Oh, it was a big straw indeed. So in the beginning, there was Solus OS, and it was Debian based for the first major release, which was like the
Mhm.
1 series. And again, I was trying to do similar things to I'm doing now, but now it's kind of more strict in how we approach problems. But once I got to the end of the lifetime of Solus OS 1, which was based on Debian Squeeze, to give you an idea of how long ago it was, we had something like 7,000 packages in the repos between AMD 64 and i386. And for what I was trying to do, it wasn't acceptable just to take on the bugs and the issues. I had to fix them. So the difference we had between us and Debian was enormous. But then trying to keep up with Debian and still keep our changes intact and not break the user experience for the users that we actually had already, it kind of felt like it was a lot more work than it was worth. So one day I had the insane thought that, wouldn't it be easier just to build this from scratch? And here I am.
Okay,
And
so
it actually
yeah,
is.
speaking of from scratch, you're using the Budgie desktop environment. Okay, and my question is sort of two-pronged, is why Budgie? Why did you just decide to make your own desktop environment, and why call it Budgie?
So the first part is better than the second part. So personally, I was never happy with GNOME Shell. I mean, it wasn't just because, oh no, GNOME Shell is here, strap down your GNOME 2s and get into the bunkers. It wasn't really anything like that. I still wanted something with a modern stack. I just didn't want the GNOME Shell experience because it doesn't do it for me. So my first effort a few years ago was something called Consort, which was a fork of GNOME fallback. And then it was taking on a lot of legacy, and it just wasn't the way to do it. So then I ended up making Budgie. I started off trying to do it the right way, which was extensions to GNOME Shell, because that's what everyone else was doing. The problem I took with that, I mean, yeah, that worked out really well for Cinnamon. The issue I had with that is everything, one, was still JavaScript, and everything was inside this one huge compositor process. And I didn't like that. I wanted to, some places, be using 2D rendering and not force everything to be on the GPU. And I couldn't do that with GNOME Shell. So I was like, well, it can't be that hard to write a panel. And here I am today with Budgie. So it's always when I have these ideas, it wouldn't be that hard. Yeah, fast forward 3 years.
Okay, so why'd you call it Budgie?
Yeah. So I was on vacation a couple of years back, and I started writing Media Player, as everybody does. And I couldn't think of a name for that at the time, and I settled on Budgie because Songbird was taken, yet I still wanted something small and noisy. That project stopped. I started writing a desktop, as you do, and I couldn't think of a name. So I just reused the old name and called it Budgie.
All right. Now, I know that Budgie is not the only desktop environment for Solus available right now. You guys also offer Mate. But besides Mate, do you intend to offer more desktop environments in the future?
No, I mean, at the moment, GNOME Shell is in the repos, not because we want to support GNOME Shell. It's primarily been used for validation if we're adding new things into Budgie, i.e. GNOME compatibility. So that's kind of why that ended up in there. There's a few people wanted tiling, so they got i3, but it's not really a desktop. For something like KDE or something, I mean, there would have to be a real serious demand for it because, one, it's huge. Two, I personally don't like it. I know others do, but it's not my area of expertise. You know,
it's interesting that you brought up KDE, because my next question is, do you take requests for new desktop environments? Because I personally, and this is a personal thing, I used to love KDE back in the 4.9, from 4.9 up to 4.14, I loved KDE. And with Plasma 5, they screwed up a lot. And I kind of wanted to see you guys, because since I've been using Solus on my laptop, and it's been working really well, I kind of wanted to see you guys have a crack at it and attempt to fix the mess that is Plasma right now.
Why would you suggest to a perfectly lovely gentleman that has taken the time to come on our show and try to shove that nightmare fuel into his face on the show, Pedro? What's wrong with you?
I just wanted to at the very least, attempt KDE to become usable at this point.
Don't do
Ikey's been doing a really good job with Budgie, so why not?
All right, Strider, what's going on?
Focus on one thing, and that's good. I mean, don't fall into like those crazy requests, because I know that I get that also on my project. And if you listen to everyone, to every request and anything, then you lose track of what you're doing and your real goal. And I find it really cool that Solus has a very precise goal, very small. And it's one of the problems with the other distributions that are around. They try too much different things, and Solus is not like that. It's focused on doing one thing and doing it really well. So yeah, I wanted to try Solus for a couple of months now, and I wanted to install it on my laptop, but the problem is I don't have a laptop anymore. So yesterday I installed it on a VirtualBox VM and worked really well. The first thing I noticed is that the system is blazing fast to boot and really reactive overall. So my question is, did you have to remove some components that are usually included in other distributions to get up to that level of speed? Because it did make a really huge difference.
So in terms of Solus optimization, I mean, at the very, very low end of it, when we think about what Solus needs when it boots, that is basically to get to desktop, we always factor in the fact there will be a display manager. It's not like display manager might be theirs. It always will be. There will always be networking. There will always be Bluetooth. So we know ahead of time all of the units that we're going to have involved in the boot up sequence. We always know what the boot is going to look like, as opposed to it might start a desktop or it might start a WordPress Docker container. We don't have that concern. But it's not just about things that aren't there. Our packages are built very differently to other distributions. I mean, for one, we don't actually really care about packaging, which is going to sound odd because we're a distribution, but we don't actually care about packaging. The way that we do it, a lot of it is automated. So if you've ever worked with RPM or Deb, one of the mind killers of it all is accounting for individual files. Whereas with our packaging, everything follows standard rules as to where things should be. Like if it's a package config file, it's going to be a development file. So we got all these assumptions where things would be, and everything just slots into place. We do compiler optimizations across the board for everything. There's a base level of optimization. And then for a certain set of packages, we apply more aggressive optimizations. So essentially everything that would lead up to the core functionality of your desktop and, say, GL games, i.e. for Steam, the vast majority of those are also optimized. So it's not just like O3, there are other compiler flags going into those. A few things use profile-guided optimization. So because we know what we're going to be looking at the end of it, we know ahead of time what things we're going to, which things we're going to optimize and which things aren't quite as necessary to the experience and could be left out. Optional support for every single codec that ever existed? No, just the things that people are going to use. So it does make the decision process a lot easier.
Yeah. So next question I had is wondered, how does software get included in the repos? Is it easy for the community to submit new packages, or is there some special process they have to go through?
So basically, we just want a Git formatted patch for a new package, and it has to only be source form. We will not take it if you actually send us a binary package, because it gets built on our infrastructure, so that we can say that it's, there is a chain of trust there. But yeah, just a Git format patch, send it on to our infrastructure, which is dev.solusproject.com. Send us the patch, we'll review it. If it needs any alterations, we'll tell you. And then boom, gets merged in. So it's very simple. And our package format is basically one file, package.yaml. So it's very, very simple to do that.
Yeah. So that brings me, you mentioned that you won't accept binaries as the packages, but I noticed that you can install a bunch of third-party apps such as Skype, Sublime Text, and everything. How do you integrate them with them? Because usually they come with debs or RPM packages. So, but I've tried to install a couple of those and it worked really well.
So we cheat.
Do you do it?
But we cheat really well. It's a system that does need improving, but the whole thing with those packages is we're not allowed to deploy them, which kind of sucks. So what we do instead is the user runs the command, or in the case of the software center, that's doing on a DBus service in the back end. Basically, it's repackaging that deb or that RPM as a deb, as an EO package behind the scenes and installing it for you. So it cheats, basically, but to the user, there is not a lot of difference because those things are generally compiled with a much older toolchain and don't have things like C++ ABI issues, i.e. the Skype stuff. That's just an Electron app.
Yep.
There's nothing you can do to improve that.
Yeah, that's a cool trick. Yeah. So would you consider Solus to be mature enough to be used by pretty much anyone that doesn't want to be part of the Solus development, or would they have to wait a little?
So what I would say is that there are two types of people that use Solus. There are those that are new to Linux in general, and they get on with Solus very, very easily. There is no misconceptions or preconceptions for them to worry about. People who are switching from other Linux distributions ironically tend to have a more difficult time adjusting to Solus because it doesn't do things like other Linux distributions, because other Linux distribution leads don't go around saying that we don't care about packages. So if you're coming from Arch or something, our way of doing things is very, very different. And people are like, I want this thing in there. It's like, well, that sounds a lot like it's for a server, but I need postfix. No, you don't. And so, they're expecting things to be like a generic distribution. If you come to Solus with an open mind and realize that it is only for the desktop, obviously we're going to enable things like web devs working on the websites. Obviously you can enable things like that, but if you're willing to put your misconceptions and preconceptions aside, then yes, Solus will work for you. If you're the kind of person who likes to compare the features of package managers, and I mean this with the best will in the world, but you really, really like Pacman and its features, Solus is not for you in the slightest. And that's meant as no knock. It's just, we're not interested in that in Solus. I don't care about package managers. It's a development feature. It's a part of the deployment. It shouldn't matter to a user. So if those things really matter to you, then don't use Solus.
Okay, so if you do, like, for example, some web developments and you do need Postgres or things like that.
That was something I was definitely about to bring up. I was like, okay, desktop user, what about the desktop like power users? The people are a bit psychotic that, let's say, have a multimedia production, live stream, editing, rendering, toolchain setup on Linux. Should I look somewhere else?
No, because as much as Solus is obviously for the desktop, you still need to get your work done. So, being able to actually, anything like content production, you're going to need to be able to do that from Solus. And we've actually started to get some stuff in the repos to enable that. I mean, we got like OBS Studio, Ardor, and all these other things starting to come in now as well. But you need to be able to get your work done, don't you? So if you're building websites, you're going to be able to have to run it locally to make sure that it's not insane. So as much as we're not for servers, and I would never recommend running Solus for a server, because I'm not going to provide support for that. But we do have Nginx is in there, and Apache HTTPD recently went in as well. So if you want to do local deployment testings, you can do that. Because at the end of the day, you don't want a neuter desktop where you can't get anything done. So we're open to that kind of request.
Yeah, but in the case of web development, you could use something like Docker, and you would have like the Ubuntu server system inside Solus without having to mess up your system. So we have
Docker as well.
Okay, yeah. I mean, as long as you have Docker, then you can have like pretty much anything that you can get in Ubuntu server or any other system. So that's cool. Okay. So last question. I noticed that one of the wallpapers has some barrels of Tulamur Dew. So I wondered if you took the pictures of the Solus wallpapers yourself.
I didn't, but I have a very good friend, John McCormick. Now, he lives over here, same as I do, and he has a company with his wife, Twisted Pixels, and they provided a few of the photos for Solus. So that one was taken very near to me because I live in Tullamore myself. So that was taken very near to me. There's the default wallpaper we have in 1.2.1 is literally around the corner from me. So I might get found by people. It's, I mean, one of the parts of Solus as well, for me, it's kind of a pride thing as well, being able to show, where it comes from and what it is. So.
All right, I guess that about wraps us up for the questions. Les, Ven, do you have anything else?
Well, we always have the one thing, but I want to remind people, if you want to check this business out, taste it. It's lovely. Like we said, look at the sailboat. Oh, it's gorgeous. That's solus-project.com. Is there any place else? Where can people stalk you online, Ikey?
Well, I'm always on Google+. You'll always find me there. As for the logo, it's not actually a sailboat.
Well, I thought it was a diseased Adidas logo, but...
Close. If your mother bought you them when you was a child, you got bullied. No, it's actually an Irish cutter because, well, Solus, the one series, which is now a bit of a joke because it's rolling release, is called Shannon. And obviously the River Shannon, Ireland. So I went with an Irish cutter because it's got a bit of an exploratory nature, because sometimes it's nice to be able to do things new. So that's part of the embodiment of Solus there. And there's the whole symbology around streams as well.
Right on, man. Definitely right on. But yes, I will get an infinite shite if I don't ask you the last question. What is your favorite way of making a grilled cheese sandwich?
So I might get a bit of flack here. So me personally,
trust me,
I won't just have cheese. Normally I like, I call it cheese and toast, but hopefully grilled cheese. For me, I'll actually do them in the oven. So first of all, I do both sides of the bread, so it's toasted on them. Turn around, I'll have cheese on one and corned beef on the other. And then a bit of Liam Parents onto the cheese, put them together, and it's gorgeous.
Right, so you heard it here, man. Solus likes grilled cheese sandwiches that bleed.
A mean grilled cheese sandwich. I like it.
It's beastly.
All right, coming up next, we have, what do we have coming up next?
Up next, we have some slice of pie. Yes.
Right.
And let's get right into this slice of pie that we have this week, because the Pi Zero has a new use, as it were. I mean, it's the Pi Zero. It gets used everywhere and anywhere given half a chance.
I'm the Raw Street now.
This gentleman managed to make it work with a skateboard. And the engines necessary, or the motors necessary to keep those wheels turning. He even managed to get it up to 30 kilometers an hour on a relatively flat and mildly bump-free surface. So I guess that's awesome.
Yeah, man. I mean, he's got the Wiimote controls. And I know a lot of people are like, okay, come on. Really, do you need like a Pi Zero to do this? I was like, no, but still, you get Pi Zeros. Control. They literally rain in some areas, or you just find them in magazines. And I looked at the skateboard and I was like, oh, no, Wiimote. It's like, that would kill me so quickly, Strider.
And just hope that the batteries doesn't catch fire like the hoverboards did a few months ago. But yeah, they say it has about 10 kilometers range, which is quite good for a skateboard like that. So if it did get made like industrially, that would be quite neat. I mean, interesting.
And I thought you would like it because it's running a bit of Python on a Raspberry Pi to run a motor.
It does use Python.
Turn your crank, so to say.
Yeah. And all the code is open source. So you can go to their GitHub page and get it all if you want to build one yourself.
Pretty cool. Let's go from something useful to something is like, all right, listen, man, I get that you made it. It's neat that you took the time. I don't get it, man.
Yeah, so this guy did So he kept forgetting that he had laundry in his dryer, and he wanted to build something with a Raspberry Pi to detect vibrations on the dryer and like send an alarm when the dryer is off. So yeah, he made that with like a vibration sensor and a Raspberry Pi and like all that thing. It's neat, I guess. You know what I do with my dryer? I just put a timer on my phone for 45 minutes and it works just as well.
You see, I got a better life hack. You just leave the clothes in the dryer, and you need to wear them. You hit the go button for about 5 minutes to get the wrinkles out, then you take out what you need.
I don't even have a dryer. It's a teeny tiny apartment. I just have like one of those foldable clothes hangers. I just put it out in the balcony and hang the clothes there.
Well, I mean, as one might do if you're living like 2 clicks off the coast of Portugal, man. Yeah, all right. I get it. Actually, my dryer is like all mechanical switches. I mean, it was made in like the late 70s. I don't think that thing, you could crawl inside that and like legit survive the nuke from the Indiana Jones movie that was never made. Okay, but let's put a bow on it. Didn't hear about this, and I was like, wait a minute, is that a good thing? Is this a bad thing? The Raspberry Pi 2 gets a processor upgrade, question mark?
Yep. And it did come out to absolutely no fanfare because when the Raspberry Pi Foundation released the 1.2 board revision for the Raspberry Pi 2, no one thought it was probably relevant to mention that the processor was now not a 32-bit Broadcom what-have-yous, but instead a 64-bit BCM 2837, which, for those of you paying attention, and if you memorize that number, I am so sorry, that is the same processor that is available out of the box on the Raspberry Pi 3. Why?
Yeah, there are still a few projects that are using a Raspberry Pi 2 instead of 3. They are not the exact same thing. So, for example, you'll have some modules, like some screens, that you will be able to use only on the Pi 2. So this allows you to build those projects with the Pi 2, but a little bit more powerful. So that's very neat. Like it.
Okay, I mean, it is a 64-bit ARM device. Is it dual core? I'm never sure. It's a Raspberry Pi specs. I got lost in them.
Well, before we get out of here, we want to give everyone a chance to talk back at us. Tell us what we're doing wrong. We love that. Or maybe we're doing something right, or maybe there's a bit of news or a story or something like, hey guys, check this out. Boy, do we have the section for you.
Indeed. It's our feedback. And if you do really make a point out of getting in touch with us, linuxgamecast.com, hit the contact button, fill out the form. Pretty easy. So, or, YouTube comments, if you must. So this week, this one actually comes from the YouTube comments. Michael had to say, in reference to the statement about Windows Click admins, this statement seems to imply that Linux admins in general are better, quote unquote, than Windows admins. I will one-up this notation and say manual command warriors are inferior to the DevOps because that's the wrong you're there, not a real engineer. If you just issue commands on a terminal to manage a system. Only real men manage systems via programming and automation, i.e. if you don't use code to manage your systems, you're wrong, you're again inferior. Writing bash scripts doesn't count. You need to use languages designed for admins tasks like Puppet and Chef. Ansible is for click admins. Puppet is like the best answer as it uses a declarative language, which is just superior to any of the imperative languages out there for managing it. Oh, he just said that Puppet is better than C.
I don't know, Strider. Is that fighting words, man? Are you ready to take somebody out?
No, I do agree with some of the things he say, but I don't want to agree with all of it because I don't like this mentality of like real men use this.
Well, your friend Strider, of course you do.
But yeah, from all the things that he's talked about, I use Bash and I use Ansible. So apparently I'm a click admin, so I'm okay with that.
Yeah, hey man, he kind of wrote this tongue in cheek because he's DevOps, and he was I was like, all right, fun read, interesting. But before we close down, Mr. Samotub, I know I butchered that. I know you're at home screaming at your monitor, but he said Microsoft had an open source wing for a long time. I remember using their OS technology early in my career. Also, I think they see Linux being the Mac Apple beater. What?
No.
No.
No, they don't care.
No. Wow, there's so much wrong with that sentence statement. Strider?
Yeah, they don't care about Linux on the desktop, and Apple and Mac is a desktop computer. But what they are looking for with Linux is something to get a system usable for the cloud computing and containers, which Windows is very bad at currently. And yeah, it makes more sense for Microsoft to adapt their software stack to Linux rather to have a Windows system for the cloud and containers, which is unlikely to happen ever.
Yeah. Microsoft really sees the point in using Linux for what the rest of the world is also using Linux for, which are servers and embedded devices and what have yous. And that's why they are now a part of the Linux Foundation. And that's where this comment comes from, because we mentioned that last week. And one other thing, there was an article earlier today that said that those $500K that Microsoft is paying to be a platinum member of the Linux Foundation is 0.25% of the most conservative average amount that they make from, say, Android patent licensing.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, man. I don't think Microsoft hates Linux. Now, 7-8 years ago, Ballmer, he called open source a cancer.
He said Linux was communist.
Here's the thing, man. I mean, they're changing under Sriracha Novella. That's a show title. I know how to pronounce his name correctly, but it's a thing I have to do from now on. I'm sorry. I apologize. Lost my train of thought. Lovely. How about we just shut this down? You can always catch us around 3 o'clock Wednesdays when Pedro doesn't drop nuclear bombs in my face 30 minutes before the show starts.
I'm sorry.
I'm riding this for months. So. But you can always find me. I'm at Vinstone on the Twitternets, plus Vinstone on the G+ is definitely. We'll try to get back to you if you have some questions, thoughts, hints, ideas, allegations, or things better left unsaid.
And you can find me being completely unapologetic on Plus Pedro Mateos on Google+, or at Unaccounted For on Twitter.
And you can find me on Plus Mathieu Commandant on Google+, or Strikor on Twitter. You can also find me on lutris.net. Try it out if you haven't already.
Patreon.com/Lutris.
Yeah, patreon.com/Lutris.
And hey, before we get out of here, just remember this is a legit show that you can watch. In the Shout Realm, as Linux Neuro said, oh man, I gotta run. Something just exploded in my living room. Bye-bye.
Bye.